The bell rang loud in Ridgewood High as hundreds of students rushed through the hallways talking, laughing and shouting, their sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, lockers slamming everywhere. In the middle of all this noise, one person moved quietly. A tall black girl with calm eyes and a serious face. She held her backpack close and walked as if she had already seen too many schools before this one. Her name was Maya, and this was her first day here. She didn't know anyone and no one knew her. But somehow when she walked in, people turned to look. Maya didn't try to smile. She didn't seem nervous either. She just looked around the classroom, found an empty seat in the corner, and sat down. The teacher, Mrs. Green, gave her a kind smile and said, "Everyone, this is Maya, our new student." The class mumbled a lazy hello, and Maya gave a polite nod. That was it. She didn't try to talk to anyone, not even when the girl next to her asked, "Where did you move from?" Maya just said softly, "Far away," and went back to reading her notebook. By lunchtime, people had already started whispering about her. "She's so quiet," one boy said. "Maybe she thinks she's too good for us," another replied. Teenagers love to talk, and when someone didn't fit in, they noticed fast. That's when Jake saw her. Jake was the kind of boy everyone knew, tall, loud, and always surrounded by friends who laughed at his jokes no matter how mean they were. He loved attention, he loved being in control, and most of all, he loved making people feel small. Jake spotted Maya sitting alone at a table near the window, eating her lunch slowly, not caring about the noise around her. Her posture was calm, like she wasn't in a hurry. That bothered him for some reason. People were supposed to react when he walked by, but she didn't even look up. He smirked and whispered to his friends, "Watch this." Then he walked over to her, loud enough for everyone nearby to notice. "Hey," he said, leaning on the table. "You too good to talk to people, or what?" His friends chuckled, expecting her to blush or look scared. But Maya didn't do either. She simply lifted her eyes and looked straight at him. Her gaze was steady, not angry, not scared, just calm, like she was looking through him. It made Jake hesitate for a second. He wasn't used to that. He cleared his throat and said louder, "I'm talking to you." Maya tilted her head slightly and said, "I know." Her voice was low and smooth. Jake laughed, trying to act brave. "Oh, you know? Then maybe you should answer when someone talks to you," he said, hoping to get more laughs from his friends. But Maya didn't even blink. Instead, she smiled. Just a small curve of her lips. That smile wasn't friendly. It was quiet and confident, and it made Jake's stomach twist without knowing why. "You don't know who I am," she said softly. The words were calm but heavy. They sounded like a warning. But Jake didn't take it seriously. He burst out laughing. "What are you, a secret agent or something?" He joked. His friends laughed with him, but the sound felt weaker than usual. Maya didn't reply. She just picked up her lunch tray, stood up slowly and walked away. Each step was measured, her back straight, not running, not afraid. As she passed by Jake, he noticed a small necklace hanging around her neck, a silver pendant shaped like a gear. It looked old, maybe something from a movie or a memory. For a moment, Jake thought he recognized it, but then he shook his head and laughed it off. "Weirdo," he muttered under his breath, trying to shake off the strange feeling crawling up his spine. But his laughter didn't sound right anymore. His friends tried to joke about her after she left, but none of them could stop thinking about that one line. "You don't know who I am." It echoed in Jake's mind all through the next class. He found himself glancing at the door, expecting her to walk in again. But she didn't. When the final bell rang, Jake was the first out of the classroom. He told himself he didn't care, that it was just a random quiet girl who needed to be taught her place. But deep down, something about her eyes and her voice stayed with him. He couldn't explain it. It wasn't fear exactly. More like curiosity mixed with unease. That night, as he sat in his room scrolling through his phone, he thought about that strange smile again. It wasn't the smile of someone weak or scared. It was the smile of someone who already knew something he didn't. He tried to laugh about it, but somehow when he turned off the lights, the words came back to him again. "You don't know who I am." He lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to forget her face, but he couldn't. And as the clock ticked quietly in the dark, Jake had no idea that his life at Ridgewood High was about to change in ways he could never imagine. The next morning at Ridgewood High felt normal for everyone, but not for Jake. He saw Maya sitting at her desk, quiet as always, reading something in her notebook. Her face looked calm, almost peaceful. It annoyed him for reasons he didn't understand. He wanted to make her react, to show some emotion, maybe fear or anger, but she just ignored him. And that made him even more restless during lunch. Jake sat with his group at their usual table. His friends were laughing about a meme when he suddenly said, "Let's have some fun today." They all looked at him, waiting. "You know that new girl, Maya? She thinks she's better than us," he said, pretending to sound casual. His friends nodded quickly, eager to agree with him. They didn't care much about Maya, but if Jake wanted to mess with her, they'd follow along. When Maya walked into the cafeteria, the noise suddenly grew louder. Jake shouted, "Hey, Diesel girl, where's your fancy car?" Everyone laughed, not because it was funny, but because Jake was the one saying it. Maya didn't respond. She walked to her table, opened her lunchbox, and started eating like she couldn't even hear them. Jake hated that. Her silence was louder than his voice. He stood up, grabbed his milk carton, and walked toward her. "You really think ignoring me makes you cool?" he said, trying to sound confident. Maya slowly looked up. Her eyes were calm but serious. "No," she said softly. "I just think you talk too much." His friends burst into laughter, but this time not the way Jake expected. It was real laughter, the kind that made him feel small. Jake's face turned red. He leaned closer to her, his voice sharp. "You better watch how you talk to me." Maya didn't move, didn't blink. She just said, "You should watch what you're doing." Her tone wasn't angry. It was almost like advice, and that made it worse. Jake smirked and said, "Oh yeah, or what?" She just gave him that same quiet smile again, the one that felt like a secret. The cafeteria supervisor shouted, "Jake, sit down." And the moment broke, he went back to his seat, pretending not to care, but deep inside, his stomach churned. Maya went on eating quietly. Jake's friends whispered things like, "She's weird," or "a creepy girl," and thinks she's some kind of queen. Jake nodded along, but he couldn't stop thinking about her expression, calm and fearless. Later that day in gym class, Jake saw another chance to prove himself. The students were running laps around the field under the bright sun. Maya ran at a steady pace, her face focused. She wasn't the fastest, but she didn't look tired. When the coach blew the whistle for a water break, everyone rushed to their bottles. Maya picked up hers and started drinking. Jake snatched her bottle from her hand and grinned. "What's this, diesel fuel?" His friends laughed again. He shook the bottle and poured the water out onto the ground. Maya stood still, watching quietly as the water soaked into the dirt. She didn't shout, didn't chase him, didn't even look sad. She just said softly, "You're making a big mistake." For a second, everyone went silent. Her tone wasn't threatening, but it felt heavy, like the air had shifted. The coach blew his whistle again, yelling, "Jake! My office, now!" Jake rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, but he still went. The coach scolded him for being immature and told him to apologize. "It's just a joke, coach," Jake said. "She doesn't even care." The coach frowned. "You don't get to decide that after gym." Jake expected Maya to glare at him or say something mean, but she didn't. When he passed her in the hallway, she only looked at him for a moment and then walked away. That look wasn't angry. It was something else, something almost sad. It made him stop for a second, his throat dry, but he shook it off and laughed it away with his friends, pretending everything was fine. The rest of the day went by slowly, and Jake noticed that people had started watching him and Maya. Every time he teased her or said something loud, more eyes followed. It was like the whole school was waiting for something to happen. Some students even whispered that Maya wasn't normal, that maybe she had rich or powerful parents. Jake laughed at that rumor, but part of him wondered, what if it was true? That evening, as he walked home, he saw a black car parked near the school gate. Its windows were dark and he couldn't see who was inside. He thought he saw someone watching him from the driver's seat, but when he blinked, the car was gone. He laughed nervously, telling himself he was imagining things when he got home. He threw his bag on the couch and turned on the TV, but he couldn't focus. His mind kept going back to Maya's voice, calm, sure, unafraid. "You're making a big mistake," he repeated to himself quietly. He didn't know why, but those words stuck in his head like a song he couldn't forget. He told himself that she was just another new student. Nothing special, but deep down something told him this wasn't over. Maya wasn't like anyone he'd ever met, and the more he tried to laugh about it, the more uneasy he felt. Something about her silence, her stare, and her strange confidence made him feel like he was walking into a trap he couldn't see. And even though he didn't want to admit it, he was starting to get scared. When school ended that day, Jake went to his locker as usual. He was still laughing with his friends about what happened in gym class, but deep down he felt uneasy. His hands were shaking a little as he opened the metal door. A small folded piece of paper slipped out and fell to the floor. Jake frowned, picked it up, and opened it. The handwriting was neat and bold. Only 4 words written inside, "He's coming for you." Jake blinked at the message, confused. For a moment he thought one of his friends had written it as a joke. "Real funny," he muttered, but when he looked around no one was there. The hallway was empty and quiet, the kind of silence that made every sound echo. He laughed nervously and shoved the note into his pocket, telling himself it was nothing, just some prank that night. He tried to forget about it. He played games, scrolled through social media, and joked with his friends online. But around midnight his phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Jake frowned and opened it. It wasn't a text, it was a photo. The picture showed him, standing at his locker earlier that day, the exact moment when he had found the note. The photo looked like it had been taken from behind the lockers. From the shadows, Jake's heart pounded. He looked around his room as if expecting someone to be there. He quickly texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. He waited, nothing. A minute passed, then another. His hands felt sweaty. He turned off his phone and threw it on the bed, trying to convince himself that it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone at school had taken it and was trying to scare him. The next morning, his eyes were red from lack of sleep. He didn't tell anyone, not even his friends, because he didn't want to look scared. But when he walked into class, he felt everyone's eyes on him, especially Maya's. She sat at her desk, quiet and calm like always when their eyes met. She smiled, not a friendly smile, but a knowing one at lunch. Jake sat with his group trying to act normal, but his thoughts were racing. His friends noticed he was quiet and teased him. "What's wrong, Diesel girl cursed you?" one of them said. Jake forced a laugh but didn't answer. When he glanced toward Maya's table, she was already looking at him. Her face was unreadable, calm, almost too calm. He couldn't stand it anymore. He slammed his tray down and stood up. "I'm going to talk to her," he said. His friends watched as he walked over, his heart pounding in his chest. He stopped in front of her table and said, "You think this is funny?" Maya looked up from her lunch. "What is?" she asked. Her tone was so calm it made him even angrier. "The notes, the pictures, all this creepy stuff," he snapped. Maya tilted her head slightly. "You got the note?" she asked. Her voice didn't sound surprised. Jake took a step closer. "Yeah, I got it, and the photo too. What's your deal? You stalking me or something?" he shouted. Maya didn't move, didn't blink. She just said, "You shouldn't have laughed at me." Her voice was quiet, but the words hit him hard. He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Maya leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharp but calm. "You were warned," she said softly. Before Jake could say anything, the bell rang. The sound made him jump a little. Maya stood up slowly, picked up her tray, and walked away without another word. He stood there, frozen. His friends laughed from across the room, thinking he'd lost the argument. But Jake wasn't even listening. Her words echoed in his mind. "You were warned." After school, Jake walked home fast. Looking over his shoulder every few minutes, he felt like someone was watching him. Every time he turned around, there was nothing, just cars and trees. At one point, he swore he saw a black car parked near the corner. But when he blinked, it drove off. He laughed nervously. "I'm losing it," he whispered to himself. When he reached home, his mom called from the kitchen. "You okay, honey?" He forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He went to his room and threw his bag on the floor. His phone buzzed again. He didn't want to look, but curiosity won. Another unknown message. He opened it slowly. The same photo appeared again, him at the locker. But now there was something new in the background, just barely visible. Was a tall shadow standing behind the lockers, watching him. Jake's hands shook as he stared at the screen. He zoomed in, but the face was blurry. The figure was huge, strong-looking. He dropped the phone onto his bed, breathing hard. Who could it be? How did they get that close? His heart pounded so loudly it hurt. He thought of Maya's words again. "You don't know who I am, and you were warned." He didn't sleep much that night. Every creak in the house made him jump. Every passing car light through his window made him think someone was outside. Around 3 in the morning, he finally sat up, sweating, and whispered to himself, "What if she wasn't joking? But then he shook his head quickly. No, it's just a prank, it has to be. But deep inside, Jake knew something wasn't right. Something about Maya, her calmness, her strange warnings, and the shadow in that picture. It all felt connected. And for the first time, the fearless school bully wasn't laughing anymore. He was scared, really scared, and he didn't even know why. By the next morning, Ridgewood High was full of rumors. Everyone had a story about Maya. Some said her dad was a soldier. Some said he was a secret agent, and others whispered that he worked for the government. No one knew the truth, but everyone wanted to guess. The mystery around her only made her more interesting, and Jake, who had once laughed at her, was now obsessed with finding out who she really was. He couldn't stop thinking about the photo, the note, and those strange words she had said. "You were warned." It echoed in his head like a ticking clock. He told his friends he didn't care, but deep down he couldn't focus on anything else. Every time Maya walked by, his stomach twisted. She didn't even look at him anymore, and that somehow made it worse. One afternoon, when classes ended, Jake stayed behind. He had made up his mind he needed to know who she really was. He told his friends to go ahead and said he had detention, but instead he sneaked into the school office. The hallway was quiet, the lights dim. His footsteps echoed as he pushed the office door open slowly. The air smelled like paper and printer ink. He walked to the cabinet labeled student records and started looking. His hands trembled as he searched for Maya. Finally, he found a folder with her name on it. He opened it quickly and looked through the pages. There were grades, attendance sheets, and a form with her personal details. He scanned the page until his eyes froze on one line. "Emergency contact, Mark Sinclair Vincent." Jake frowned. "Who's that?" he whispered to himself. The name sounded strange, familiar somehow. He took out his phone and searched it online. The screen loaded slowly, and then his mouth fell open. Mark Sinclair Vincent. That was the real name of Vin Diesel, the Hollywood actor from Fast and Furious. Jake's hands shook as he whispered, "No way. That can't be real." He stared at the screen again and again, thinking maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone at the school typed it wrong. But then another thought hit him. That necklace she wore, the silver gear-shaped pendant. It looked just like the one Vin Diesel wore in the movies. His heart started beating faster. Could it be true? Could Maya actually be Vin Diesel's daughter? The room felt colder suddenly. The quietness of the office made him nervous. He heard a soft creak, like the sound of someone stepping on the old wooden floor behind him. He froze, slowly turning around, but the office was empty. He laughed quietly, trying to calm himself. "I'm just imagining things," he said under his breath. Then a voice spoke from the dark corner, calm and quiet. "Now you know." Jake dropped the file. His heart nearly stopped. Maya stepped out from the shadows. Her eyes calm as always, her presence filled the room. "You shouldn't have done that," she said softly. Jake stuttered. I just wanted to know the truth." She shook her head slowly. "The truth isn't yours to take," Jake tried to speak. "So? It's true? But she raised her hand to stop him. "It doesn't matter who my father is," she said. "What matters is what you did." Her voice was low but strong. Every word made his chest tighten. "You wanted to humiliate me, but now you're the one who feels small." He took a step back. "Look, I didn't mean—" Maya's eyes narrowed. "You did mean it," she interrupted. "You laughed, you mocked, and you thought I wouldn't do anything. But you were wrong." Jake's throat felt dry. "Are you going to tell him? Your dad?" he asked weakly. Maya didn't answer. She just looked at him for a long moment, then turned toward the door. Before leaving, she said one last thing. "He already knows." Then she walked away, her footsteps slow and quiet. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Jake stood there frozen, his heart racing. He ran out of the office, looking around the hallway, but she was gone. It was like she had vanished when he got home that night. He couldn't stop thinking about her words. He already knows. What did that mean? Did Vin Diesel really know what was happening? The idea made him shiver. He imagined the famous actor standing at his door, angry, ready to protect his daughter. The thought made him laugh nervously, but the laugh didn't sound real. He couldn't eat dinner, couldn't sleep. Every noise outside his window made him jump. Every car that passed by made him think of the black SUV he had seen before. He even pulled the curtains closed tightly, afraid someone might be watching. He wanted to tell his parents, but how could he explain? "Mom, I bullied Vin Diesel's daughter." It sounded insane that night as he lay in bed. His phone buzzed again, his heart sank. He picked it up slowly. Another message from an unknown number. This time it was a video. His finger trembled as he pressed play. The clip showed the office from earlier. Him opening Maya's file. Scrolling through her records, someone had filmed him. He stared at the screen, terrified in the background of the video. Maya's calm voice said, "I told you, you don't know who I am." Jake threw his phone onto the bed, his chest tight with fear. He couldn't breathe properly. He buried his face in his hands and whispered, "What did I do?" The shadows in his room felt heavier, darker, and for the first time, Jake truly understood that something bigger than him had started. Something he couldn't stop now. And it was all because he had tried to mock the wrong girl. The next morning, everyone at Ridgewood High was talking about something strange. A big, shiny black SUV was parked outside the school gate. Its windows were tinted so dark that no one could see inside, students whispered as they passed by. Wondering who it belonged to. Some said it was a celebrity. Others joked it was the FBI. The rumor spread faster than wildfire. Inside the school, Jake sat at his desk. His stomach in knots, he had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Maya's voice in his head. He already knows. The words echoed again and again. He wanted to forget, but he couldn't. When he saw the black SUV through the classroom window, his heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be. Could it? By lunchtime, the whole school buzzed with excitement. Students crowded near the windows to get a better look at the mysterious car. Some even said they saw a tall man in a leather jacket stepping out earlier. Jake tried to act normal, but sweat ran down his neck. He felt like the walls were closing in on him. Then, just when he thought it couldn't get worse, the intercom crackled. "Jake Thompson, please report to the principal's office." The voice echoed through the cafeteria. His fork slipped from his hand. His friends looked at him, laughing. "Oh, what did you do now?" One said. Jake forced a weak smile. Probably just detention or something. But deep inside, fear twisted in his chest like a cold knife. He walked through the hallway, every step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached the office, the secretary gave him a strange look and pointed to the door. "They're waiting for you," she said softly. Jake frowned. "They?" But she didn't answer. He pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the principal sat behind her desk, looking nervous, and beside her sat Maya. Calm as ever, her eyes met his, and that same unreadable smile crossed her face. Jake's throat went dry before he could say anything. The door behind him clicked shut. A tall, broad man in a black leather jacket stood there. His head was shaved, his expression serious. Jake's eyes widened. He had seen that face before, not in school, but on TV and movies. His heart almost stopped. Vin Diesel stood right in front of him. The real Vin Diesel. His deep voice filled the room. "You must be Jake," he said slowly. Jake couldn't speak. He just nodded. Vin took a step closer. His boots were heavy against the floor. "You've been picking on my daughter," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried more power than a shout. Jake opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His knees felt weak. I didn't know," he stammered. "I swear I didn't know she was—" Vin cut him off. "It doesn't matter who she is. What matters is how you treat people." The room was silent, even the air seemed to stop moving. The principal looked uncomfortable but didn't say a word. Vin continued. "You thought you could bully her because she was quiet, because she didn't fight back." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "But family doesn't stay quiet when one of us is hurt." Jake swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" Vin raised his hand. "Sorry doesn't erase pain," he said calmly. "It doesn't fix what you broke, but it can be the start of something better. If you mean it," Jake nodded quickly. "I do, I swear." His voice trembled. Vin looked at Maya, who was watching silently. "What do you think?" he asked her. Maya looked at Jake for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. "He's scared now," she said softly. "But fear isn't change." Vin nodded slowly. "Then we'll see." He turned back to Jake. "You get one chance, one." Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping low. "Family protects family. Remember that." Jake felt the words hit him like a punch. He couldn't breathe for a second. Vin stood straight, nodded to the principal, and left the room. Maya followed quietly. She didn't look back. The silence that followed was heavy. The principal finally cleared her throat. "Jake, you're suspended for a week," she said. Her tone was firm but not angry. Jake didn't argue, he just nodded and walked out. His hands were still shaking. When he stepped outside, the black SUV was gone. The parking lot looked normal again, as if nothing had happened. That night, Jake couldn't stop thinking about what happened. The image of Vin Diesel's serious eyes burned in his mind. He wasn't just a movie star anymore, he was real. And terrifying in a quiet way. Jake realized something deep that night. It wasn't about fame or fear. It was about respect. About the fact that people you think are small might be protected by something bigger than you could imagine. He sat by his window, staring at the streetlights. Thinking about Maya, she hadn't said much. But her silence spoke louder than any threat. It was like she knew he'd learn the hard way. He whispered to himself. Family protects family. And for the first time, those words didn't sound like a movie line. They sounded like a warning and maybe a lesson, one that he would never forget. When Jake came back to school after his suspension, everything felt different. The hallways that once made him feel powerful now made him nervous. People looked at him, whispered behind his back, and some even laughed quietly when he passed by. He tried to act tough, but the truth was, he didn't feel like the same person anymore. His confidence was gone. Replaced by guilt and fear, Maya was there, sitting at her usual table, calm and quiet as always. She didn't even glance at him when he entered for some reason. That hurt him more than if she had shouted at him. He had expected her to gloat or smirk. But she didn't. She acted like he didn't exist. And that made him feel invisible, forgotten. His friends tried to joke about it. "Man, can you believe Vin Diesel showed up here?" One of them said, laughing. "You're basically famous now," another added. But Jake didn't laugh. He couldn't. The memory of Vin Diesel's cold eyes and deep voice still haunted him. Those words, "family protects family," echoed in his mind every time he closed his eyes. Classes dragged on slowly, and every teacher looked at him differently. The principal had told them everything. He could see it in their faces, disappointment mixed with pity. He hated that feeling. During lunch, he sat at a table with his friends, but the laughter around him felt fake, forced. The noise made his head hurt. Then he noticed Maya sitting alone again. Just like before, he stared at her for a long moment. His tray untouched, she was reading something, maybe a book or a notebook. The sunlight from the window fell across her face, and she looked peaceful, completely unbothered. Jake hesitated, then took a deep breath. He stood up, picked up his tray, and walked toward her table. His friends called out behind him, "Bro, what are you doing?" But he didn't answer. When he reached her table, she looked up slowly, her eyes calm, her expression unreadable. "Can I sit here?" Jake asked quietly. For a second, she didn't say anything. She just looked at him, studying his face, then she nodded once and went back to reading. He sat down across from her, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't know what to say. "I just wanted to say sorry," he finally whispered. Maya didn't look up. "You already said that," she replied softly. Her voice wasn't cold, but it wasn't forgiving either. Jake nodded. "Yeah, I know, but I mean it." "I really do." She turned a page in her notebook and said, "Do you even know what you're sorry for?" Her question hit him like a punch. He frowned. "For bullying you," he said quickly. She closed the notebook slowly and looked at him. "That's only part of it," she said. "You're sorry because you got caught, not because of what you did. You were sorry the moment my dad walked in, not before." Jake swallowed hard. She was right. He looked down at his tray, pushing food around with his fork. "I didn't understand," he said quietly. "I thought it was just fun. I didn't think it really hurt anyone." Maya sighed softly. "It always hurts someone, Jake. You just didn't see it because you didn't want to." Her tone wasn't angry. It was tired, like she had seen too much already. They sat in silence for a while. The cafeteria noise faded into the background. Finally, Maya said, "You think you can fix everything with one apology, but life doesn't work that way." Jake nodded slowly. "I know," he whispered. "I just want to make things right." She looked at him again, her eyes calm but sharp. "You still don't understand," she said. Jake frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Maya didn't answer right away. She picked up her bag and stood up. "You'll see," she said quietly. "Sometimes sorry comes too late." Then she walked away, leaving Jake sitting there, confused and uneasy. That night, Jake couldn't sleep again. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. replaying her words in his head. You still don't understand. What did she mean by that? Was it a warning? Or just a way of saying she'd never forgive him? He didn't know, but something about her tone made him restless. He looked out the window, the streetlight shining faintly through the curtains. For a moment he thought he saw a black car parked across the street. His heart jumped, he blinked, and it was gone. Maybe he was imagining it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still happening, something he didn't see yet. The next morning at school, Maya wasn't there. Her seat was empty. Her locker still had the same small sticker on it, a silver gear symbol. Just like the one on her necklace, Jake touched the locker door softly. Feeling a strange sense of guilt and fear, he whispered, I just wanted to fix it, but deep inside, he felt that whatever was coming next was already too late. He walked to class, his mind heavy. Every sound in the hallway seemed sharper, louder. His heart thudded with unease. He didn't know what Maya had meant. But he knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Not yet. And the real lesson, the one she said he didn't understand, was still waiting for him, somewhere just around the corner. That night, Jake sat alone in his room, the darkness thick and heavy. The only light came from his phone screen, glowing softly in the silence. He couldn't stop thinking about Maya's last words. You still don't understand. They echoed in his mind again and again. He tried to tell himself it was over, that she and her father had probably moved away, but something deep inside told him it wasn't finished. Not yet. Suddenly his phone buzzed. The sound made him jump. His heart raced as he picked it up, an unknown number again. He hesitated before opening the message. His fingers trembled slightly. The message contained a photo. His eyes widened. It was him, sitting at lunch that day right next to Maya. Someone had taken the picture from outside the cafeteria window. The angle was strange, almost like it came from far away beneath the picture. There was a short line of text. You can't escape what you've done. Jake's heart pounded. He looked around his dark room, half expecting someone to be standing in the corner. He quickly texted back, Who is this? What do you want? But no reply came. He waited, seconds stretching into minutes, nothing. He threw the phone on his bed and ran downstairs to his parents. His voice shook as he told them about the message. His mom looked worried. His dad frowned. Maybe it's a prank, his father said. Probably one of your school friends. But Jake shook his head. No, you don't understand. It's her. It's Maya. His parents exchanged a confused look. His mom said gently, You said that girl moved away, didn't you? Jake froze. Moved away? He repeated, Who told you that? His mom replied, The school called. They said her father withdrew her records yesterday. They're gone, Jake. She's not coming back. His hands went cold. He ran upstairs again and opened his phone, searching for her number, her social media, anything. But it was all gone, deleted as if she had never existed. The next morning, when he got to school, her locker was empty. The silver gear sticker that had been there since day one was gone too. Even her nameplate on the attendance list had been removed. The teacher called roll, and when she skipped over Maya, no one said a word. It was like the entire school had forgotten her. But Jake hadn't. He couldn't during lunch. He sat alone at the same table where she used to sit. His friends didn't come near him anymore. They said he'd become weird, whispering things about ghosts and guilt. He didn't care. He stared at the spot where she always placed her lunchbox, remembering how calm she used to look even when he was cruel. The words, You were warned, replayed in his head again and again. He couldn't focus, couldn't eat, couldn't think. That night he sat in front of his laptop, scrolling through interviews of Vin Diesel, trying to convince himself it was all in his head. One video caught his attention, a new interview uploaded just a few hours earlier. The actor looked tired, his eyes sad. The interviewer asked, You've inspired so many people with your movies about family. What keeps you going? Vin smiled faintly and said, I once lost someone important who reminded me what real strength looks like. Jake leaned closer. His heart beating fast, Vin reached into his shirt and pulled out a necklace, a silver gear pendant, the exact same one Maya used to wear. She taught me that kindness is more powerful than anger, Vin continued, and that sometimes people don't realize the damage they cause until it's too late. Jake froze. His eyes filled with tears he didn't understand. He whispered, Maya. The video continued, but he didn't hear the words anymore. All he could see was that pendant, shining softly against Vin's chest. The same pendant he had seen so many times in the cafeteria, hanging around Maya's neck. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. His breath caught as he opened it. This time it was a short video. It showed the empty cafeteria, his table, and a voice, her voice, whispering, "Did you learn now, Jake?" His hand shook as he stared at the screen. Then the video ended, leaving him in total silence. He dropped the phone and covered his face. His heart raced, his body trembling. He whispered, "I'm sorry. I really am," over and over, but deep down, he knew it didn't matter anymore. The damage had been done. The lesson had already been delivered. From that day on, Jake changed. He stopped bullying anyone, stopped laughing at others. He kept to himself, quiet and distant, but sometimes when he walked past the cafeteria window, he swore he saw a reflection, a girl with calm eyes and a small smile. Watching him from outside, years later, Jake grew up and became a teacher, hoping to guide kids so they wouldn't make the same mistakes he did. But every time he heard the name Maya, his heart skipped a beat and that voice returned to his mind. "You don't know who I am," and sometimes late at night, when the wind howled and shadows danced on his walls, his phone would light up just for a second, showing a single message before the screen went black again. Family protects family. That was when Jake finally understood. The world had punished him in the quietest way possible, by letting him live with the memory, by making sure he never forgot the girl he once mocked, and the lesson she left behind that no one truly disappears, especially the people whose pain you ignore.